Hare Krishna. Good morning, dear devotees from Sridham Mayapur. Hare Krishna. This is our daily class of Srimad Bhagavatam. Makaranda, Shri Makaranda Panakori, Anande Guru Hari Hari, Harinka Nami Vandavela, Marukuri Bechakadura, Shri Chakadoyanka Paraye, Manamura Nirantare, Manamura Rahu, Hare Krishna, Bole Jiva Jao, Hare Krishna, Bole Jao Jiva, Mote Radha Radha, Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Good morning, dear devotees from Srimad Mayapur. So we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, King of all literatures, the third canto, the teachings of Lord Kapila Dev. And today we're finishing chapter 25, which is text number 44. Chapter 25 is devotional service. And in this verse, Lord Kapila Dev is speaking to his mother, Devabhuti. Etavan ekalokesmin pumsam nishreya sodaya tibrena bhakti yogena manomaya pitam stiram. Translation: therefore persons whose minds are fixed on the Lord engage in the intensive practice of devotional service that is the only means for attainment of the final perfection of life. Srila Prabhupada writes in his purport, hear the words mano mayarpitam, which mean, quote, the mind being fixed on me are significant. One should fix his mind on Krishna or his incarnation. To be fixed steadily in that freedom is a way of liberation. Maharaj Ambarish is an example. He fixed his mind on the lotus feet of the Lord. He spoke only on the pastimes of the Lord. He smelled only the flowers and tulsi offered to the Lord. He walked only to the temple of the Lord. He engaged his hands in cleansing the temple. He engaged his tongue in tasting the foodstuff offered to the Lord. And he engaged his ears for hearing the great pastimes of the Lord. In that way, all his senses were engaged. First of all, the mind should be engaged at the lotus feet of the Lord very steadily and naturally. Because the mind is the master of the senses, when the mind is engaged, all the senses become engaged. That is bhakti yoga. Yoga means controlling the senses. The senses cannot be controlled in the proper sense of the term. They are always agitated. This is true also with a child. How long can he be forced to sit down silently? It is not possible. Even Arjuna said, Chanchalam himana Krishna, quote, the mind is always agitated, end quote. The best course is to fix the mind on the lotus feet of the Lord, mano mayarpitam stiram. If one seriously engages in Krishna consciousness, that is the highest perfectional stage. All Krishna conscious activities are on the highest perfectional level of human life. Thus in the Bhaktivedanta purports of the third canto, 25th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The Glories of Devotional Service. Gora Graganya Gana Gocha Goloruharam Goranga Gura Tamagopyada Kopabhushan Gopalagada Ratidam Yati Singha Gora Govinda Deshikavaram Satatam Vanchakalpatarubhishchan Kripa Sindhu Vyayevachan Patitanam Pavanibhyo Vaishnavibhyo Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare. Good morning, dear devotees. Srila Prabhupada later commented on this verse in purport. He said, this verse marks the conclusion of Bhakti Yoga, as described by Lord Kapila Dev to his mother. So we've been hearing quite a few things about Bhakti, and as opposed to liberation, as opposed to trying to fix the mind in different ways. And here in this verse, which is the conclusion of this chapter, Lord Kapila Dev tells his mother that Tibrena Bhakti Yogini. Tibrena means very intense. That one should practice Bhakti Yoga in a very intense way. Not like people who are casual persons who come to church once a week or who practice yoga once or twice a week. But Tibrena Bhakti Yoga, it should be constantly performed. Mano Mayat Pitam Stira. One should be arpita and stira, should be fixed and steady in fixing the mind on Krishna. And how can one do that? Srila Prabhupada described in a lecture on this verse, there are innumerable forms of God, Ram, Nrsimha, Viraha, Krishna, Kapila Dev, Balaram, and so on. Sometimes foolish persons ask, you're worshiping Krishna, why don't you worship Ram? Actually, there's no difference between Krishna and Ram, but everyone has his preference. That's an important comment. Everyone has his preference. For instance, Hanuman was particularly devoted to Lord Ramachandra. The gopis are exclusively devoted to Lord Krishna. This does not make any real difference. The Lord appears in different forms, but in all cases, he is the Lord. Once, Krishna left the gopis and changed into his four-handed Vishnu form. The gopis went out searching for Krishna, and when they saw the four-handed Vishnu form, they did not offer much respect. They simply wanted to see Krishna. Actually, there's no difference between Krishna and Vishnu, but every devotee has a particular inclination. In the Vaishnava Sampradaya, some devotees worship Radha Krishna, and others worship Sita Ram and Lakshmi Narayan. Some also worship Rukmini Krishna. All of these are the same, and all the devotees are Vaishnavas. Whether one chants Hare Krishna or Hare Ram, it's not very important. So then the question comes, if this is said, then what is the point of this verse? Tivrena Bhakti Yoga, Mayarpita Mano Buddha. He's saying to Mayarpitam Stiram, he's telling his mother that with great intensity one should fix the mind. The nature of bhakti is that someone becomes more and more personal to the point where we fall in love with a particular form of the Lord. Prabhupada says, actually there's no difference between Krishna and Vishnu, but every devotee has a particular inclination. In the Vaishnava Sampradaya, some devotees worship Radha Krishna, and others worship Sita Ram and Lakshmi Narayan. There's a nice story in this regard in Jagannath Puri. It's said that once while reading through the Valmiki Ramayana, Tulsidas, a great saintly person and poet of the 16th century, he came across a verse where Lord Ramachandra instructs Ravan's younger brother Vibhishan, Kim Chanyad Vakhtinichami Rakshasindra Mahabala Aradaya Jagannatham Ikshvaku Kuladaivatam. Almighty ruler of the Rakshasas, there's one more thing I wish to say to you. You should worship Lord Jagannath, the Lord of the Ikshvaku dynasty. So when he read that, Tulsidas developed some great desire to have Lord Darshan of Lord Jagannath. And so he left Kashi, Benares, and he walked the entire distance to Jagannath Puri. It must have taken him a few weeks anyway. And when he arrived at the temple of Lord Jagannath, he came before the deities, and Tulsidas was disappointed. Although the form of Lord Jagannath, Baladev, and Subhadra is transcendental and very ecstatic, Tulsidas wanted to see his beloved Lord Ramachandra. And so with a heavy heart, he left the temple. He wouldn't eat anything, wouldn't drink anything. He walked about 6 miles away to a village which is still there today called Malatipattapur. It's not so far away from our ashram in Jagannath Puri. Malatipattapur today is more famous because of the bus stand, which is there. But originally, it has some connection with Tulsidas and Lord Jagannath. And so Tulsidas was staying there overnight in that village, Malatipattapur. And that night, while he was sleeping, Tulsidas had a dream. And in his dream, he saw Lakshmi Devi speaking to her husband, Lord Jagannath. And she said, my dear Lord, this is very bad. No devotee ever leaves Jagannath Puri without taking prasadam. But Tulsidas became discouraged, he didn't honor anything, and now he's fasting. So in his dream then, Tulsidas saw that Lord Jagannath took the form of a young boy. And he came to where Tulsidas was sleeping. And Jagannath asked him, what have you written in your Ramcharit Manas about the nature of the absolute truth? And in his dream, Tulsidas replied, Bina pada chalai shunai, Bina kana, koro bina karamakalai, bidinana. Arana rahita shaka, rasha bhogi, bina, binobani bhakati, bhara jogi, tana bina padasara, noyana binu deki, grahai grahan, binu masa, asesha, asisa bhavanti, alo, kika karani, mahima, jasujai, nahi barani. He says that bina pada chalai suna bina kana. He walks, but he has no feet. He hears, but he has no ears. He does so many actions, but he has no hands. Anana rahita shakala rasha bhogi. He enjoys all tastes, but he has no mouth. And he's a very clever speaker, even though he doesn't have a tongue. He touches tada bina pada shanayana bina deka, even though he doesn't have a body. He can see, even though nayana bina deka, even though he doesn't have eyes. He smells, although he doesn't have a nose. All his activities are so wonderful. They're amazing. So then Lord asked him, isn't this the same form of Jagannath that you've seen in the temple? Until she woke up. Whoa. And for the rest of the night, he became very contemplative after such an amazing dream. And he sat there just chanting the holy name of Lord Ram. And then the next morning, he ran all the way back to the Jagannath Mandir while thinking about this dream. We were speaking about Malati Patapur, where Tulsidas spent the night after leaving the Jagannath Mandir. And so this time when Tulsidas entered into the temple, he saw that Jagannath, Baladev, Subhadra were gone. But instead he saw Ram and Lakshman with Sita sitting between them. And then Tulsidas began to offer so many prayers and began to cry. The Bhagavatam in the third canto describes that the Lord is so merciful to his devotee that according to the particular form that he meditates on, tadvapu pranayase sadanugrahaya, the Lord manifests a particular form. Because Krishna is controlled by bhakti. But one thing we learn also from this comments from Srila Prabhupada is there's a difference between the form of Krishna and Vishnu. Although he also says there's no difference, we can give an example that the moon is the moon. It's not that when it's Ardha Chandra, half a moon, it's not really the moon. But the moon is only really the moon when it's Purnima, when it's completely full. No, the moon is the moon, whether it's just a sliver of the moon or half a moon or the complete moon. But there's still a difference between the manifestations of the moon. And although Krishna and Vishnu are not different, Krishna's form is superior. Rupa Goswami describes this in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Siddhanta Twasta Dedepi Srisha Krishna Sarupayo Rasana Krishna Te Krishna Rasam Esa Rasaskitahi. He says that although in terms of Siddhanta, they're a beta. There's no difference between Sri Isha, the husband of Lakshmi, Lord Narayan, the husband of Lakshmi Devi, and Krishna. In terms of transcendental mellows, Krishna is superior. And Srila Jiva Goswami, in his commentary in this verse, of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, he tells a wonderful story. He says that when the queens of Dwarka, the Mahishis, went to Kurukshetra, these are the married consorts of Krishna and Dwarka, when they went to Kurukshetra, they saw the form Krishna had manifested in Braj. Because when Krishna came before the gopis, the residents of Vrindavan, who also came there to Kurukshetra, he couldn't keep that original form. Just as Srila Prabhupada speaks in the purport about this place we know as Paita, which is near to Chandra Sarovar, which in turn is near to Govardhan Hill. And there at Chandra Sarovar, once Krishna performed his Ras Leela. We sometimes go to Chandra Sarovar, that place is still there today, along with Paita. And there at Chandra Sarovar, Krishna decided he would play some games with the gopis. And so he disappeared before them. And he went and hid himself in the bushes nearby in the place known as Paita. And then the gopis became like an army searching for Krishna. And as they were searching, they saw him suddenly in the bushes at Paita. And they said, there's the son of Nanda Maharaj. And they all went running. And at that time, Krishna decided, I'm going to play a little trick on him. And Krishna then manifested a four-armed form of Lord Narayan. Now, this four-armed form of Lord Narayan is also Krishna. But there's a difference between that form of Narayan and this original form of Krishna. Krishna's form is described here by Rupa Goswami. Rasano Krishyate Krishna Rupam Esha Rasa Stiti. Krishna's form is superior because of his sweetness. So the gopis, they saw Krishna in his Narayan form from a distance, and they went running there. They said, there's Krishna. And then they went there and they were disappointed. They said, oh, it's not Krishna, it's only God. And then they offered their obeisances. Please accept our obeisances, God, Lord Narayan. Please, can you tell us, where is Krishna? But Lord Narayan was very mysterious, and he didn't say anything. He just smiled a little and stood there. And then the gopis said, okay, Dandavat Chalo, and the gopis left. And then Srimati Radharani came to that place. And when Srimati Radharani came, Krishna thought, this is really a good joke I'm doing. I'm going to play this on the daughter of Maharaj Vrishabhanu. And so he kept that four-arm form. But when Srimati Radharani came before him, two of those arms just went away. Vrindavan Das Thakur says in Chaitanya Bhagavat, Jai Rupa Chinche Dasi Se Rupa Hoy, that the Lord manifests a particular form according to the mood, according to the desire of the devotee. And Krishna becomes overwhelmed by that. He couldn't keep that four-armed opulent form of God before Srimati Radharani. The Vedic culture is different than Western religion, which teaches oftentimes a kind of sectarianism. But in Vedic Indian culture, all transcendentalists are respected according to their level. But at the same time, it's understood there's different gradations of the Lord. And according to the mood of a devotee, the Lord will manifest in a corresponding way to that person. For someone who wants to see, who doesn't believe in God at all, as we were commenting the other day, then Krishna says in Gita, Mrityu Sarva Haraschaham, that I'll manifest as death, and you'll have to admit I'm defeated by something superior, which in the skinny means God. Or if someone wants to consider that God has no form, then he manifests as a form of Brahman, Brahma Jyoti. Or if someone thinks of God as a very, very opulent person, he's in control of everything and he's doing, then he maybe has 4 arms or he has 1,000 arms, and they see him in that kind of way. But the residents of Vrindavan, they simply see Krishna in a very sweet, loving way. And so when Krishna and Kurukshetra came before the gopis of Vrindavan, Krishna wasn't able to keep that opulent dress, that opulent form that he manifested before the devotees in Dwarka. Because those devotees in Dwarka, they like to see and think of the Lord in that opulent way. But when he went to Kurukshetra and he saw the gopis there, Krishna became overwhelmed with love. And he manifested his original form of Vrindavan Bihari Krishna. And when the principal queens of Dwarka saw that, now bear in mind, they're married. They're married to Krishna and Dwarka. And that Dwarkadish Krishna has a certain mood, a certain form, and they married him. But when they saw that form of Vrindavan Bihari Krishna, Krishna who's very playful in Vrindavan, they said, forget it. We don't want to go back to Dwarka. We don't want to go to Vaikuntha. All we want is we just want the dust from his feet, which are smeared and beautified with the kumkum coming from the gopis' breasts. We only want the dust of Vrindavan. This is Jiva Goswami's explanation of what the queens in Dwarka thought when they saw Krishna's form in Kurukshetra. They said, we don't want any mystic perfections. We just want to serve the gopis. That's all that we want. We want to accept this Gopi Bhav. We want to take birth in Vrindavan. So this is Krishna's nature. Krishna is more attracted by sweetness than he is by opulence. And anyone can understand this. Many years ago, we wrote some magazine about this topic, and in the editorial there, I wrote something about Mr. Bill Gates, who's, I don't know, in the top 2 or 3 wealthiest persons in the world. And he used to live near our temple in Seattle, Washington, a huge place. And Bill Gates has everything. Sometimes he pays for the Lakers, the basketball team in Seattle, to come and do a private performance in his private gymnasium that he has. He has everything you can imagine. But there's one thing that Mr. Bill Gates doesn't have. He's a little short on friends who just like him for himself. Because constantly he's being besieged by people who like him, so-called like him, because of his money. And so Mr. Gates, with this problem, sometimes he would put a hat on and some funny glasses and maybe even a fake mustache or something, and he would go to some local bar and just hang out and meet people and try to make friends with someone. To be friends with someone who liked him for himself, not because of his opulence. So this is the problem that God has, in a much, much greater extent than Mr. Gates. Therefore, in Hari Bhakti Sudhadoya, the Lord tells Prahlad Maharaj, Sabhayam Sambramam Vatsa Madgorava Kritam Tyaja Naisa Priya Mabhakteshu Sudina Pranayi Baba. Api me punakama shanavam navam idam priyam nishanka pranayad bhakto yan mam pashyati basate. He said, my dear child. He addresses him as Vatsa. Vatsa is translated as child sometimes, but Vatsa literally means a calf. And the affection that a mother feels for her baby calf. He's speaking in that way. He said, Sabhayam Sabramam Vatsa. You give up this reverence for me, which is mixed with fear, bhaya, arising from my greatness. He said, I don't like this. Naisa priyo me bhaktashu. You should be independently devoted among my devotees. Swadina. Swadina means independent. Swadina pranayi bhava. You should have this mood. He says, Api me punakamasha. Although I'm full in all my desires, still I much prefer it when my devotee approaches me out of love, not with fear. And he quotes a verse, he speaks a verse in which my Guru Maharaj used to quote very often. Sada mukto pi badhosmi bhaktesu sneharajubi ajitopi jitoaham tairavasopi vasikrita. He says, although I'm always liberated, sada mukto pi, there's still badhosmi, I become bound up with the rope of love of my devotee. But the devotees who worship the Lord in a very opulent way, they can't bind him up. They can't tie him up. This is the wonderful glory of Krishna. Krishna doesn't insist that you worship him. He's not like the God of the Old Testament who will damn you to hell for eternity and throw lightning bolts at you if you don't worship him, and everyone's terribly afraid of him. Krishna doesn't force anyone to come to him. But Krishna, rather, he attracts the devotees through his sweetness. And when those devotees fall in love with Krishna, the amazing thing is that Krishna, although he's ajita, which means he can't be conquered by anyone, he says, ajito pi jito aham. Although I can't be conquered by anyone, still I become conquered. I become overwhelmed by the love of my devotees. And he says that Chakta Bandhu Janasneho Mayam Kurute Ratim. This is the nature of someone who has love for me. They give up their affection for their friends. And he says, Ekas tasyasmi sa chame na chanyo stavayo surit. I am his, and that devotee is mine. And there's no friendship for us except between the two of us. I don't know anybody but that devotee, and that devotee doesn't know anyone but me. This is the nature of love for the devotees. So Krishna is the source of all the different avatars of Krishna. And he tells the devotees that this very opulent way of approaching me is not so pleasing to me. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, in Adi Lila chapter 4, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami describes the thinking of Krishna. And he says that, Aishvarya Dhyanete Shava Jagat Nishrita Aishvarya Sitila Premi Nahi Mura. He says, Aishvarya Dhyanete Shava Jagat Nishrita. Everybody, their love for me becomes weak. Shitala means weakened. Shitala prema. Their love is weakened because they see how opulent I am, that I'm God, that I've created everything. He says, but that prema, nahi mora prita, it doesn't please me. I'm not satisfied with that. And Krishna says a very, very confidential thing. The same God who's worshipped in all the churches and all the mosques, all the temples all over the world, and to whom everyone prays to as a controller, a destroyer, everything else. He says, Amare Ishvara Mane Apana Kehina Tana Premi Basha Ami Nahayi Ardina. He says, if someone thinks of me as a supreme Lord and himself as his subordinate, he says, that's okay. But Tara Prema Basa Ami Nahi Adina. It doesn't control me. It doesn't make me Adina. It doesn't make me subservient to that person. Krishna says, Ye yatam mam prapadyante, tam sataiva bhajamyaham mama vartmanu vartante manusya parta sarvasa. He says, however someone approaches me, I reward them, I reciprocate accordingly. So if someone is thinking of me as Bhagavan, as God, okay, then they can come and they can see me in the office. But they don't get to see my sweetness. He says, but mora puta, mora saka, mora prana, pati bhava jay, more kore sudha bhakti. If someone has love for me and they think of me as their son, their friend, or their beloved, he says, apanake bodhomani amare samahina. Sometimes they think of me as the same as them, sama, or even hina. They think that I'm lower than them. Just like the cowherd boys, Krishna's dear friends. Sometimes Sridaman, he comes before Krishna and he stamps his feet in the ground and he slaps his arms. And he said, Krishna, you may have killed a few insignificant demons. Agasura, who's like a little worm. And Putana, who is an old lady. But now Sridham has come before him. And you've never defeated Sridham. Sridham's going to defeat. And he challenges Krishna to a fight. Sridham is such an intimate devotee of the Lord that he sometimes thinks he's greater than Krishna. And Krishna thinks to himself, Mata more puta bhave kore nai bandhan, atihina gyani kore lalana palana. It says, Mata more, my mother, Sometimes she's thinking of me as her son. And Kori Lalana Palana, she's nourishing me and protecting me. She thinks that I'm completely helpless. He's the same person who's creating the universe, who's destroying everything. But he's saying like this. And therefore, Srila Raghunath Das Goswami, in his Manasiksha, he says, Api Chakva Lakshmi Patiratim Tovyo Munayanim Braje Radha Krishna Surati Manito Tvam Bhajamana. Api Chakva. Chakva means to give up. To give up. Api Chakva Lakshmi Pati Ratim. Your rati, your attachment for Lakshmi Devi and her husband, Lord Narayan, and just worship Krishna in Vrindavan. Huh? Prabodhananda Saraswati has a similar mood. He describes in his Vrindavan Mahimamrita, Makuru Karmanya Yogo na Vishnu Bhajanam Navashavanam Dhruvam Avjyasi Padapadam Vrindaranya Yata Tapta Tishtan. He said, Makuru Karmana Yoga. Don't do pious activities in the Dharma. Don't do yoga. It's just a waste of time. He says, Na Vishnu Bhajanam. Don't worship Lord Vishnu. Rather, you should just worship Krishna. He said, don't even hear Lord Vishnu's name. Just reside in Vrindavan, the place of sweetness. I'd like to finish with a special story that I heard. Was guided to me from the King of Puri. I once asked him, what is the meaning of some of the dresses of Lord Jagannath? We gave him a magazine in which I printed some article. We had some research in of different dresses of Jagannath. And I found out the history and story behind each one of the dresses and the materials of the dresses. But there was one dress I couldn't find the origin of. I learned about it, what it consists of, and I had photos even of it. That dress is called the Sunavesh, or the dress of gold, opulence. And I told the King of Puri, I said, what is the story behind this? And he was quiet for a moment, he thought, and he said, to tell you the truth, I don't know. He said, but you should go to the Rajguru, one Punda in Puri, whose family traditionally give initiation to the kings of Puri, and you should ask him that question. And so I went to him, I told him the King of Puri sent me, and he told me an amazing story that dated back about 1,000 years to the Ganga king, Anantavarma Choda Gangadev. In a research said that he's the person who built the Jagannath Mandir, the present temple there. At that time, in the temple, there was one devotee named Dineshwar Sharma. And Dineshwar Sharma was a Brahmin. He would dress Lord Jagannath. And Maharaj Choda Gangadev was also a devotee of Jagannath. And although he was the king of Puri, he would personally go to dress Lord Jagannath. And when he would dress him, because he's a king, and kings are really into like big stuff, like Mr. Trump wants to have a parade in Washington, D.C. with tanks and all kinds of things. That's what kings are into. So when he would dress Lord Jagannath, he would dress him in a really opulent, very grand way with very expensive silken cloth and gold ornaments and crowns. And then he would leave. And then Dineshwar Sharma would come in. Now Dineshwar Sharma, this Brahmin, he had a different mood toward Lord Jagannath. He saw Jagannath as Brajesha Tanaya, the son, Tanaya, of the Braja Isha, of Nanda Maharaj, the king of Vrindavan. And he didn't like to see Jagannath dressed in such an opulent way. This is not good. Jagannath is Krishna. Krishna likes to be dressed as a cowherd boy. So every time after Choda Gangadev would dress Lord Jagannath, Dineshwar Sharma would come, he would take it all off. And he would redress the Lord using flowers and tulsi. And he'd put a peacock feather in the Lord's head. And sometimes, in the Jagannath temple, it goes on to this day, sometimes he would give Jagannath a flute. And so this went on for some time without the king knowing it. And then one day, Maharaj Choda Gangadev forgot something on the altar, and he came back after an hour or so, and he found that someone had changed all the decorations he made. He became very angry. Called for everybody, who did this? And all the Brahmins were shaking and afraid. Finally, Dineshwar Sharma stepped forward and said, I did it. Why did you do this? This is nonsense. You dressed Jagannath up like a village boy. This is complete nonsense. He's the Lord of the universe. He owns everything. He should be dressed in such an opulent way. And Dineshwar Sharma was saying, no. Huh? Jagannath is Shyam Sundar Krishna. He's Nanda Nandan, the son of Nanda Maharaj. He's Gopinath, Radhakant. He's Vrindavan Bihari. We should dress him in that way, not in a mystic, opulent, majestic way. So they had a big argument. And finally, they agreed to go and speak to one sadhu, whose name was Mudagal Rishi. And they went before him and they both explained their sides. And Mudagal Rishi was very wise. He listened patiently, both of them. He said, well, it's kind of hard for me to say which one of you are correct. Because both types of worship are bona fide. He said, look, I'll tell you what, why don't you guys stay here in my ashram for some days and let me think about it. And so the Rishi arranged some nice rooms, so they separate rooms, so they didn't argue. And he also arranged Jagannath Mahaprasad. When the prasad came the first day, Dineshwar Sharma sat down and he followed the rituals of the Puri Brahmins, and he performed achana, and he began to perform Swasti Vachana, Om Swasino Govinda, Swasino Chitantanto, Swasino Vasudeva Vishnu, chanting different mantras with his eyes closed. And finally, when he opened his eyes, much to his surprise, the prasadam was gone. He thought, anyway, Raki Krishna Mare Ke, Mare Krishna Raki Ke. Whatever Jagannath likes. If he wants to kill me or protect me, it's up to him. It seems like he doesn't want me to eat today, so I'll fast. So he didn't take anything. The next day, the prasadam came again. Again, he chanted his mantras with his eyes closed. And again, when he opened his eyes, it was gone. This went on for 3 days. He's probably getting pretty hungry. And he was really, what is going on? So the final time, he kind of had his eyes half closed. And he was watching. And then he saw a very old and really, really skinny Brahmin come in very slowly. And that Brahmin, his hands were shaking, picked up the prasadam and began to walk away. And Dineshwar Sharma then jumped up and ran behind him. And he said, hey, old man, just wait. Huh? I don't mind if you take the prasad. I just want to know who you are. What is going on? This is so weird. Come sit down with me in my room. But that old man, when he saw the young man running, he became frightened. And he started running. And suddenly the old man, he fell down, he stumbled, and he fell down and hit his head badly. And he died right there. Dineshwar Sharma was horrified. My God, what did I do? He said, this old man died because of me. He's a Brahmin who was just coming to take the Lord's prasadam. I have committed a great offense. What can I do to atone for this? And so he decided the only thing I can do to atone for this offense is to burn the body of the old man and jump into that fire and take my own life. And so then he started burning the body of that old man. And he was about to jump in. And then suddenly the Supreme Lord is known as Yageshwar, the Lord of Yagya, sacrifice. He came out of the fire and he stopped him. And the Lord said, what are you doing? Don't take your life. You're my dear devotee. And then he took Dineshwar Sharma and he put him on his lap and he patted him on the shoulder. And he said, what is the problem? Why? And Dineshwar had told him about the whole story with the king. I wanted to dress you in a sweet way. The king wants to dress you in this opulent way. And the Lord said, don't worry, I like your worship. I'll accept your dress. Now, while all these unusual things were going on, to say the least, Maharaj Chodagangadev had been hiding behind a column and watching and seeing his worshipable Lord and the special favor that he was showing to Dineshwar Sharma. Maharaj Chodagangadev fell down on the ground and began to cry and offer prayers. And then the Lord picked him up and put him on his other leg and said, don't worry, king, it's all right. I'll also accept your dress. So that Panda in Puri, he told me that Lord Jagannath accepts both the dress of Maharaj Chodagangadev and the Brahmin Dineshwar Sharma. 3 or 4 times a year he accepts the dresses offered by Chodagangadev, and they're known as Sunavesh, Raja Rajvesh, etc. But however, according to the Pandits, Lord Jagannath, he accepts the dress of Dineshwar Sharma every day. And that's called Bada Shringara Vesh. And we wrote some article about that. And that dress is a very, very sweet dress. You may see just behind me, there's a beautiful red cloth here. This cloth is called the Gita Govinda Kandua. It's a 12-foot long red silk cloth, which was originally offered to the deity of Jagannath in Puri. One of the Pandits gave this to me. And you see written on it here different lines in a real language. These are verses from the Gita Govinda, a wonderful book which glorifies Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan with the gopis. And this Gita Govinda is so dear to Jagannath that he wraps himself up in it every night. And this is a major part of the Bada Shringara Vesh. So, although the Lord is worshipped often in a very opulent way, he prefers the sweet mood of the devotees, and especially those devotees in Vrindavan. So it's a big topic. These are a few thoughts on this subject today. We've gone longer than I wanted to go. Nice to see Lynn here, and Madhupati Prabhu, Hare Krishna, Natalie, Roma, so many devotees. If anybody has any reflections or comments, Hare Krishna Mahendra Prabhu, I was thinking about you. I hope you like this Jagannath Katha. He's an audio bhakta. If you want to please the audio bhaktas, tell them stories about Lord Jagannath. Lynn's asking a question. How do we check ourselves so that our single-minded, intense, and focused devotional service doesn't become a matter of, quote, trying to storm heaven and might possibly become too intense, leading us to become very hard upon ourselves, judging our practice constantly and harshly, and thus are in danger in allowing our devotional service to harden rather than sweeten and soften our hearts? What a very thoughtful question. It gives me so much happiness to hear you asking that. And therefore, bhakti has to be performed under some guidance. We need to work under the bhakti, under the devotee who knows Krishna, who has love for Krishna, who can guide us. Because otherwise, it's the nature, if you study sociology of religion. My stepfather had a master's degree in sociology, and I used to speak to him about this topic. Every sociologist of religion can tell you that when someone converts from one religion to another, they naturally become fanatical. Because it's all they can do. Before they had all their friends, and their friends, just like I sometimes comment, when I was 8 years old, my parents changed from being Baptist to Methodists. And at that time, my grandmother cried for like a week and said, "You're going to go to hell." I can't even tell you what the difference is between the Baptists and the Methodists, but this kind of fanaticism is there sometimes, that we can't tolerate other people, and especially it happens in new converts. So we need to work under the guidance of genuine devotees, and we need to be very careful. A genuine devotee will guide us that don't try to take shelter of external things. Sometimes even as devotees, we see problems in the society. We see that the children or the women or black-bodied persons or Spanish persons have been abused in some way or another, because that's what goes on all over society, everywhere. And we think we can't tolerate this in our society, and we have to do something about it. And that's a good motivation. We shouldn't tolerate those things. But the solution is not to introduce more divisions and more distinctions between the body. The solution is to practice bhakti in a gentle way, to practice bhakti in a deep, and Srila Prabhupada commented in this verse reading today, in a natural way, in a way that's natural for us, which is not too harsh. And therefore, we should chant under the guidance of the devotee, and they'll recommend to us how to behave. And wow, look who else is here today, Krishna Kun. Seshadev Mahapatra. From Jagannath Puri. Seshadev stays in our ashrams. And Ramana Sukha Prabhu, my respected Guru Jana, disciple Srila Prabhupada, is commenting, we are instructed to worship Radha and Krishna as if they were Lakshmi Narayana. That's a very interesting comment. But if the devotee develops a mood of Braj Bhakti, do they see and relate to Radha Krishna deities as they are? Or does a devotee mix the Lakshmi Narayana mood with the mood of Radha and Krishna? Well, for those who may not understand this comment, first of all, Srila Prabhupada has instructed the devotees that when we worship the deities, of Radha Krishna, our movement, we should dress them in a very opulent way, like in the mood of Lakshmi Narayan, with golden jewelry and very fancy ornaments and silken cloth and different things. So he's asking, so if someone develops a mood of Braj Bhakti, how do they relate to those deities? Obviously, if they develop a mood of Braj Bhakti, they're going to see them as Radha Krishna. But even within our own movement, Srila Prabhupada has given us certain prayers. We pray every day to Tulsi Devi, Shri Radha Govinda Premi Sadagena Basi, that may always swim in the love of Radha and Krishna. It doesn't say that Sri Lakshmi Narayan Premi. It doesn't pray to grant us residence in Vaikuntha, but the devotees aspire for Vrindavan. So although we sometimes worship the deities in the mood of Lakshmi Narayan, we do that because we don't have qualification, as Lynn was intimating, to just walk in to the house and say, yo, here I am, and see how you doing there, Radha and Krishna. We don't have adhikar for that. Rather, we worship in an opulent way. But in our cultivation of bhakti, in our reading, we hear Krishna book, and we meditate on Radha and Krishna. In our prayers, we meditate on Radha and Krishna. And we aspire, when will this day come? Kabhi Habhi, Bolo Se Dina Amar. When will this day come when I can see Radha and Krishna in Vrindavan and can worship them in that way? So we'll stop there. I'll ask real quickly. Anybody have any quick comments? It should be quick because it's 5 after 9. We got about 15 minutes to break the Kadasi here in Mayapur. If you want to say something, you should come here. Krishna, come. You need to come here. You want to say something? Want to find me? Okay. So thank you all very much, and we'll be back again, not tomorrow, but we'll be here again on Saturday. And thank you, Lynn. Thank you, all the devotees. You know, sometimes I see what's going on in the world in this pandemic, and it's a very disturbing thing. I can't see the Vaishnavas. I can't be with them. I can't give them hugs and sit and take the sadhana with them like we'd like to. It's a very difficult time. And for me, all that makes sense to me right now is to hear Srimad Bhagavatam and do kirtan. Krishna has come. She has a question. Give her the mic.
You explained the beautiful story about the queens of Dwarka meeting Krishna at Kurukshetra and just wanting the dust of Vrindavan after that because Krishna manifested for the gopis Vrindavan Bihari Krishna form, because that's how the gopis wanted to see him. How do we understand that? We know that all devotees are completely satisfied in their particular relationship with Krishna. How do we understand this?
What to speak of the queens of Vrindavan? What to speak of? There's Lakshmi Devi, and to this day there's Vrindavan. Hare Krishna Vaisheshika with my humble pranams. Mrs. is such a great inspiration for us. In Vrindavan, Lakshmi Devi is staying there, and she's praying that she can enter into Vrindavan, enter into the Rasa, because she sees Krishna. And although she's married to Lord Narayan, when she sees Krishna, Krishna's form is so sweet that she says, forget it with my husband, I want Krishna. And similarly, the kings in Dwarka, when they saw that beautiful sweet form of Krishna, that he manifested before the gopis of Vrindavan, they completely forgot about their attachment to that opulent form of the Lord. So it's due to the power of that sweet form of Krishna. Many, many things could be said about this. I'm going to have to stop there because we need to take a break at Kadasi. So tomorrow we won't be here, but Saturday we will return again, if Krishna wants. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Vamsha Kalpadari